Hello Facebook, thank you for attending the very first Actisense Tech Tuesday. So, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for tuning in. As this is the first session, just a little bit about what hashtag Tech Tuesday is all about, and what we aim to achieve for you guys from it. So, depending on the success of this session and future sessions, it's either going to be weekly, bi-weekly, or it will be a monthly thing, depending on the demand that we get from you, basically. So we want to hear as much as possible from you guys, and that feedback is very important to us. They're going to be half-hour sessions, and the main aim is to answer any common questions that may be surrounding our products in the confusion when using them, or if I can do anything to help make your use of them as easy as possible. It's not designed as a one-to-one kind of tech support help desk thing. It's it's really just to try and nail in and home in on those common questions that we get. We will try and our marketing manager Matt McCartan is here with me today as well, just behind the other side of the camera. He will be pitching any questions that you have to me, and he's the guy that's been out on Facebook and on the MailChimp campaigns, making you guys aware of this hashtag Tech Tuesday. We've had quite a large response in regards to increased number of followers on our Facebook page, and I'll kick things off with our first question, which came from Chris Webb via our Facebook page, and he's asked, is there an engine database that we have, like an engine manufacturer database that we have for the EMU to help you guys make it easier for configuring the EMU. When it comes to choosing the EMU, it's not actually the gauge, it's not actually the engine manufacturer or the model number or anything like that that is the important part. The most important part overall is actually the gauges themselves, the ones that you see on your dash panel, for example. On our website, under the EMU frequently asked questions page, there's a list of 50 gauges that work with the EMU1. You'll notice that the majority of them are VDO gauges, so that you may have a gauge on your panel that doesn't say video. It may not be listed on our compatibility table, but chances are it's probably going to be using a similar gauge resistance table to the VDO model. So that, and because there are such a large number of engines that exist that are out there, it's really difficult for us to be able to keep an up-to-date and accurate database. So there wouldn't be a great deal of point in us having something like that, because it could lead you astray. Another question from Chris Webb again was about any features that we have planned for the future development of the EMU. So I'll dive into some of those right now. Our engineers next door are currently working on the next release of the Actisense toolkit and the EMU firmware, which we're expecting to have available soon. The toolkit is currently at a beta stage of testing, and that has a lot of extra gauges in it that we've been asked for. We've been working with a lot of our customers on to develop those gauges and get them included into the toolkit. So that release will be coming soon, so more gauges. A popular request from our customers at the moment is for the customized ability to configure the gauges within the toolkit, so you can configure that resistance curve yourself. I understand that there are certain solutions out there at the moment that are able to do that, not with the EMU, but with alternative products. But the problem is with those at the moment is that they have a 2-point. You plot them across 2 points, which makes it linear. And I don't know if anybody's ever seen a resistance table, but as the name suggests, well, it's a resistance curve, so it's not linear and therefore not entirely accurate. But it is planned for us to release a much more customised ability to configure the EMU and be able to build your own resistance curve. The next one is a simulated data view. I've recently come back from America, actually, where I attended the Advanced NMEA 2000 training course and visited our US distributor, Gemico, and delivered some training to those guys over there. And this simulated data view was very popular, a very popular request, especially from those guys, in helping you to understand the data that's available on the network without having to filter through all the PGNs that are inside of NMEO Reader. So that is, again, that's something that's on our wish list and hopefully coming soon. And the engine hours as well, that's also a popular request, being able to configure the engine hours inside of the EMU. I appreciate that when you get the EMU, the engine hours inside of it are going to be 0, which won't match your engine. That the ability doesn't exist right now to change that, but the EMU will remember the engine hours and keep that in its memory for ticking over, but it won't. It's more of an EMU running hours at the moment rather than an engine running hours. But we do plan to allow you to be able to change that. So I'll go to my first question then, which was, Matt, from Chris again, wondering about
RPMs.
Okay, anything specifically about RPM, Chris, or? Is Chris still there?
I believe so. I'll come back to that one.
Okay, so any more questions coming up at the moment?
Not currently, no.
No one else there at the moment.
Oh, no, sorry, Chris has just replied. He's wondering about RPMs for the gauges.
As in monitoring RPM from the gauge. So if you need to know the with regards to the TAC input for the EMU, you need to know what there are 4 different methods for connecting the EMU1 TAC input. Those are all detailed in the manual, and to configure those inside of the toolkit, you need to be able to know what the engine PPR is, or the pulses per revolution. That you can find that information out either directly from your engine manufacturer, or you can find it in the engine manufacturer's manual. I'll show you. If you're not familiar with the toolkit, I'll try and I'm not sure how well you can see from here. Maybe if anybody's watching on a laptop or their desktop PC and they have toolkit on their installed on there, then maybe they'd like to sort of follow along. But I'll just show you the interface for configuring the EMU. So the first thing that you'll be asked to do when you load a new blank config, which is the option across the top ribbon menu, is you'll be asked to give the configuration a name. So let's say, for example, this is my port engine. I'll name that port. I'll be able to bring it a bit closer. I can just temporarily bring it closer, and I can show you for those that can't see, the config tool. So you can see there at the bottom the T1 and the T2 inputs. That's where your engine speed is, and so you select that from the drop-down list, and then you need to enter your pulses per revolution value in this next box, and then up the top there is the sensor device. You need to make sure that the
are the PPRs typically the same for V8s?
It can vary on quite a large number of factors. Well, not a large number of factors, but a certain number of factors. You can. The EMU1 manual does also show a number of ways for calculating the PPR yourself if you don't have it. So if I go into the Actisense toolkit and select the engine, the current EMU, so I've selected the EMU there, and you can see on the right hand side there's all the product information there, and then once I've selected RPM and input the PPR value, I can then select this button at the top here, which is to center device. Okay, I'm just going to set this up here and try and get it a bit steadier for you there. Okay, Chris, I understand a bit better what you're asking now. So the TAC gauges aren't listed because all you need to know is the PPR. There's no issue there with the compatibility on the gauge there. You simply need to know what the PPR value is. Do we have any further questions at the moment so far? I mean, I can keep going through the toolkit and just kind of show you guys what to do and how to configure the EMU. Can everyone hear me all right? Just give us a thumbs. Okay, Chris, sorry it's not that easy for you to get from your manufacturer. Like I say, if you know certain parameters about your engine, and which you'll find inside what the parameters you'll need to know are inside the EMU manual, you should be able to calculate that yourself. Everyone can hear me all right though, yeah? Right, I'm going to carry on going then. So I'll carry on showing you the configuration then for the EMU. The first, like I said, I've started from a new blank configuration here, which is this button at the top. But we have a number of new ways that we've brought in since the introduction of the Actisense toolkit, which are advancements from what we had in the previous EMU configuration tool. We now have the ability to load from device. This is useful if you've just arrived at a boat that has an EMU1 and you're trying to investigate an issue there may be on the network, and you want to know how that EMU has been configured. You can do that load from device. It's also useful if you've already done a send. You can then close this configuration box down and do a load from device there. And that will give you a good confidence check that you know that the configuration that you think has been sent to the EMU has in fact been sent. So what's loaded there is the configuration that I currently have set up on my mini NMEA 2000 network over here with the EMU1. For those of you that aren't aware at the start, the NGT, the Actisense NGT, the one on the right hand side there, the red bodied one on the right hand side, that is needed for you to access for you to be able to configure the EMU via the toolkit. So the first thing that you'll see when reading from left to right in the side of the toolkit is there's this column here that says instance. What that's referring to is the data instance, or the PGN instance number. So this is only ever important. You only ever need to look at this column if you have more than one engine. If not, just leave it at 0. Most MFDs that I'm aware of will default to set a port engine to look for instance 0 for a port engine and instance 1 for a starboard engine, and then obviously it can get a little bit more complicated as you go up from 1 into the sort of 2s and 3s if you've got 4 engines on board, and it may need some sort of custom setup on the receiving device from that end. Then moving over to the right hand side, you've got the parameter there, so that's the gauge parameter that you want to monitor, and then there's a selection of gauges for you to choose from. These are the gauges I was talking about just now that are on the compatibility table, and they also contain a lot more, the ones that I recently mentioned that we've just been adding to the toolkit. This current feed option over here, so if you wanted to, you could connect directly to a sender and leave the gauge out of circuit, and if that's left in auto, then the EMU will automatically detect whether or not the gauge is present and send a current feed to the sender so that it will work. Try to focus a bit better, certainly. Maybe I'm a bit too close. Is that okay? Can you see that all right? Does that look good? Okay, so there's the current feed option that I mentioned just now. The gauge, the different gauge options, the gauge parameters over here, and the instance. So when you're sending to the device, you need to make sure that the engine gateway, the Actisense EMU, is selected in the network list there on the left-hand side. You can see it highlighted, and then hit this Send to Device button. Okay, and that's an EMU configured. Forgot to mention there, you can get a few alarm. You've got some alarm inputs there. A number of alarm parameters that you can see, you can choose from. And when you're setting the alarm features, you normally have sort of a normally open or a normally closed sort of relay or alarm, and so it's best to sort of play around with this. Set the voltage levels to halfway between the operating voltage of your alarm, and then set it to below. If that doesn't work, then change it to above, and that should help. The next thing I'd like to show you is if the data, I sometimes get questions on the tech support desk at Actisense that the display isn't showing the data that the data they're expecting to be able to see, and this could often be because the instant numbers haven't been configured correctly inside of the EMU. One way to look this up is if you use our NMEA reader program. NMEA reader will allow you to see all of the live data that's currently being transmitted around the bus. So just as a good confidence check again to see whether or not it's the setup of the device that you're using, that you're trying to see the data on. It's good to have a look at that. So you can see there I've got the engine parameters dynamic PGN there that's being transmitted to the network, and that contains all of the stuff that I need. You can see on the right hand side it's got temperature, which is measured in degrees Kelvin. It's listed as Kelvin because that's how it's defined in the NMEA 2000 specification. Our engineers have put a conversion in there to show it as degrees, so it means something to us humans. There's also the value in there for pressure, which is just above. So if I was to move this temperature gauge on my panel that you can see here, we've got some little potentiometers that we can show being used with the EMU, which is simulating that data, and it's changing the temperature. Changing the pressure. See the pressure change. And that's all thanks to the configuration that I just sent to the EMU. So again, just to reiterate there, then this is a great way to look and diagnose your network. If you're not seeing the data where you're expecting to be able to see it, this is a great way of checking that it's actually available on the network, and that maybe what needs to happen is you need to go and look at the device and go into the device's menu and set up the menu so that it knows where to look for the data from. Okay, are there any further questions so far? Okay, if there aren't any more questions, we are sort of fairly close to the end of the first half hour, so I'll start to wrap things up. But please feel free anytime you want just to come by our Facebook page. Let me know sort of your burning questions that you have about any of our products, not just the EMU. The first one to start off with was the EMU, just because we are doing a lot of work on that at the moment, and you know, these releases will be available soon. That's it for the first ever Tech Tuesday. Thanks very much, and see you soon.